science fiction on a screen so bright. Old classics and the new delights. The Unapologetic Geek will lead the way, with facts and fun to fill your day. Discussing every detail, every frame, from the eerie to the loud and the tame. Gig along with all that's great, those Sunday vibes you can't debate. Tug along with the Sunday crew, geeking out is what we do. Giggle on, it's gonna be great. Don't be late, let's celebrate.
That intro is way cooler in 3D, let me tell you.
I can barely see in 2D.
That actually hurt. But hi, welcome to TUG Chat. How's it going? Today it's going to be just me and Thrash. Nice and personal. And as the disclaimer above me says, today I'm making this R-rated explicit, so that way me and Thrash can feel a lot freer to say what we want to say about this movie, because this movie deals in some heavy subject matter, and I don't want to worry about saying the word fuck anymore. I just want to be able to say it. So just FYI. Now that that's out of the way. we've cleared the air. I want to say hi to the people in the chat. I saw that Danny was here. John Orchard was here, and he had a book signing yesterday. Awesome.
Thank you in advance. He sent me a copy of his book. Thank you in advance, Johnny.
Awesome.
Can't wait to read it.
Very cool. Danny Staten, like I said. Esmeralda's here. Hi.
Esmeralda.
Tracy's here. Hello. Vim Vander Straten. Who wrote that song? AI wrote that song. Oh, that's an AI song. Sarah's the one who put all the stuff into it.
Since we'll be talking about Harlan Ellison today, shouldn't be AM.
Oh, my copy's out of arm's reach. Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of reading that right now. Because I haven't read it since high school. Yeah. It's one of the best like cosmic horror sci-fis. Anyway, we're not talking about that. I mean, we might.
You might, Rabbit, you might.
Anyway, yeah, and more people are gonna filter in, and I'm gonna try to highlight as many chats as I can. But you know me, I will get engrossed in the conversation, totally miss it. There was something else I was going to say, and I've already forgotten what it is. Anyway, programming note going forward. Me and Thrash have talked about it. I haven't talked about it with anybody else yet, but I was trying to come up with a way to make these streams a little more tight. Like, having 6 people on a panel is fun for a while, but it gets a little overwhelming. There's too many voices talking over each other, and I want to keep it more intimate, you know? So I'm going to try to rotate people through. So just like have a smaller panel every week of like 2 or 3 people in addition to me, and, you know, go from there. I haven't decided how I'm going to do that yet, but I'm going to like talk to my usual people who I keep on the panel, you know, Damien, Tracy, Sarah, maybe some other people. I was thinking of inviting Danny, actually, and just asking them to come up with topics, and whatever topics they want to talk about, they can join the panel, and the other ones can, you know, just take a week off, you know, like stuff like that. I haven't exactly figured it out, but going forward, that's kind of what I'm thinking, just so you know. But anyway, let's talk about A Boy and His Dog.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. If you're not familiar with it, stop time so that you can go watch my video on it and then come back and then start time back up again.
This thing will mean so much more to you if you're actually familiar with the source material. Sometimes you can wing it. No, you really need to see a boy dog.
Yeah.
To get the full value of this chat.
Yeah, and I suspect we're also going to be talking about the story a lot. So I hope you've at least read one version of the story. If not, you'll probably figure out the differences that we're talking about, because I guess I'll make them pretty clear. Like, one of the things I wanted to talk about, just on that subject, was in the book. One of the things that I don't think is in the movie is that the people in the Down Under, the people in Topeka, like, they, in the book, isn't it that they can't have boys, that all the babies that are born in the underground are just girls. Am I misremembering that, or is that in the story?
I haven't read. In fact, I was thinking about rereading the stories for the purposes of this chat, and then I realized we'd probably specifically be talking mostly about the movie, so I didn't. That could be. I think the biggest difference, though, as far as Topeka goes, is that in the movie, it's this very sort of Hobbesian, controlling fascist state, whereas in all the written adaptations, it's just dull. They decided to go back to turn of the century, middle America, and that works out fine, but it's so dull, people become lethargic, and it's more, they need someone with virility as opposed to the stock they have that are just sort of lost interest in everything, including the opposite sex.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't sure if I was remembering correctly. I read the story before I did my review last week, but then I watched the movie, and then I've been engrossing myself in Robot Monster for the last week, so my memory's terrible. That's why I have these, by the way, Robot Monster.
I love that movie.
I do too. It's great.
I love that movie. And the fact that the guy, he plays his own commander back on the homeworld. So the fact that he's arguing with himself, but he sells it. I love it. They actually stole that idea for the Sumtaran experiment for you Whovians out there.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, I dug deep for this one. Let me tell you. And that one was off the cuff because I didn't know we were going to be talking about Robot Monsters. So.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows that that's what I'm working on, because my hint last week at the end of A Boy and His Dog was apparently a little too obtuse. Nobody got it. Not even Indy got it.
Wow.
Anyway, we're not talking about Robot Monster, even though that's like swimming in my brain. We're talking about A Boy and His Dog.
Yeah. Now it is. Also post-apocalyptic.
It is post-apocalyptic. That's right. What else? Don Johnson. Yes, Don Johnson in his pre-Miami Vice days. Mm-hmm. Other than A Boy and His Dog, I've never seen Don Johnson in anything else that I can remember, other than, Miami Vice and A Boy and His Dog. I mean, unless I'm missing something obvious, because like I said, I have a terrible memory. They're the only things I know.
He was in a couple of things, but none spring to mind. Nothing of note.
I remember just like briefly browsing through his IMDb when I was doing my research, but like I don't remember anything jumping out at me. I'm like, oh right, he was in that. And like I don't have that. So like in my brain, he's always Miami Vice or he's
A Boy and His Dog.
A Boy and His Dog.
I'm with you there.
Which are two very different characters.
Yes. Although, are they? Are they?
Indy is here now, finally.
Indy, good to see you, man.
According to them, mostly girls are born. I thought there was like a line or something in the book, because it got me thinking about like maybe the underground is supposed to represent femininity and the overground is supposed to represent masculinity or something. But that could have just been my academic brain going overdrive,
Well, I actually have a working theory on the whole subterranean birth rate, but I'll wait till we get to that organically before I spring that on you.
Fair enough.
So we'll have to plan out this organic springing.
Yes, yeah. Individualistic Mind is here. Apparently he was a Vietnam vet in Ceasefire. Never seen it.
Yeah.
Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
Okay, I did see that.
It's been a long time. I don't really remember.
All I remember is Tia Carrera from that movie. That's all I remember.
That's all I can think of too.
Sorry.
It's okay to be a dirty old man in this chat. It's fine.
But I was a teenager when I saw it, so that's even worse. It left an imprinting on my mind.
I wish I had like put some notes in an outline or something. I was just going to do this organically, and now my brain's not working.
Well, do you want to start with the moral angle, and then we can talk more about like plot contrivances? Because this is what brought us here to begin with.
That's true. We did have a disagreement about what A Boy and His Dog has to say about morality.
So I really think we should cover that before we get into the nuts and bolts. And would you mind if I started?
Go for it. Yeah.
My case. The thing that I kept coming back to, and I must confess, it didn't start with morality. It started, is Vic dangerous, was the question. And I think we could yes, Vic is very, very dangerous. But the question of the morality of Vic came up, and is there even a place for morality in a post-apocalyptic setting? And one thing, you have to paint with a wide brush. They talk about that all the time in works of post-apocalyptic fiction, specifically in The Walking Dead. We all will have to do things that we don't want to do, and certainly would have never done in the old world of towels and sheets. But again, well, let's take Jaws for example. I know it's a reach, but they talk about the shark in Jaws, and they say it swims and it eats and it makes baby sharks. All three of those things it does because it has to survive. If it stopped doing any one of those, the species would die out. So is the shark evil? No, it is not. It's certainly not nice, but you can give it a moral hall pass. In A Boy and His Dog, they sometimes kill. They sometimes use, spoiler alert, they use human flesh as nourishment. And the third thing they do is do very unsanitary things to young women without their consent. The first two I can justify because if they didn't do them, they themselves would die. The third one I can't get past. It has nothing to do with survival. It's only Vic's sordid appetites. And that's why I cannot give him a true post-apoc hall pass as far as moral ambiguity goes.
And for a lot of that, I do agree. But I think what A Boy and His Dog really reveals is this like idea of beneath the backbone of civilization is a sense of shared morality. Like, and I think when you strip away the actual civilization through nuclear war, what does that say about morality? Where does morality go? And I think knowing Ellison and knowing how he feels about humanity, I kind of know what his take is on it. But I think the story is a little more open-ended as to whether or not you would consider Vic a moral person, because he is doing what he needs to survive. But in the story, and I mean in the movie, and especially in the story, he is a scumbag. Like, he is not a good person in any respect. In fact, the story almost feels it's like Ellison is trying to get you to hate him for the first, few paragraphs. Like, he's really trying, because all he's interested in is raping women. That's his goal. That's more important to him in the beginning of the story than feeding his dog. Whereas in the end, it switches around. Yeah.
He risks both their lives in order to do that. Both
Correct.
Their lives, not just his, both their lives. Yeah.
And that's his character development.
Although you can say there is a redemption to an extent. He does realize that his going into the Down Under, which is a major plot point, he has to do it for the sake of the story. But his motivation is, at that point, it's actually revenge. He's so blinded by the fact that Quilla June got something past him that now I've got to go down there and make it right, leaving blood to his fate. When he comes back, he makes the decision himself. It's one of the few decisions he makes solely on his own that's a positive one, if you can call it positive. But he realizes he loves because when he's leaving and he and Tiger have that exchange, it's almost like something with Soylent Green. It's like, and I'll miss you, Vic. And he goes, I know, boy, I'll be back as soon as I can. And you actually, for the first time, you see true emotion. When he comes back, he makes the sacrifice. He chooses his companion and friend over, I hate to use the term love interest, but for want of a better term. But
no, I mean, that's what it is. Yeah.
And you see it in his face. It's almost like, you know what you got to do, cowboy. And it's I had more fun rewatching this film than the first time I saw it. I loved it the first time I saw it, but it's so fun rewatching again to just watch things come together when you know what's going on.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree.
He's not without at least one redeeming quality.
No, I think if you want to stretch it, again, this is my academic brain working overdrive. This could be like the beginning of rebuilding morality and hence rebuilding civilization. Like, this is his first step to defeating the primal beast that he is, the immoral or amoral beast that he is. And Indy brings up a good point. There's a difference between immorality and amorality. For now, I'm just going to use them interchangeably because they sound the same anyway.
Good point. Good point. It's now in the books. It's actually his Jiminy Cricket moment. He feels, for the first time, at least that we know of, he feels guilt from this choice, and that guilt begins to destroy him. Particularly if you read "Blood is a Rover," which, of course, is from the. I wrote it down because I could never remember this. The Shropshire Slasher poem by someone. Oh, I got it. I feel like Miss Mid. No, it was a mistake with farm equipment. But anyway,
I always think of it as that James Ellroy novel, but that's just me because I'm a James Ellroy nut.
But the line is "Blood is a rover. Clay lies still, but blood is a rover." The idea is I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Right.
And of course, it's a double entendre because rover is synonymous with dog, and blood is
blood
dog.
Is the dog. Yeah.
And I've gone so off topic here. in the third chapter, Vic becomes almost catatonic with guilt from this decision, even though, as we've discussed on several occasions, it was the smart play. I'm afraid. Because you notice something else. There's one thing that and I hated it from the beginning, and it's every time I see it, it rings more true. Quilla June, the first thing she does when she comes up to the surface world, the first thing she does is, "Oh, it's too late. The dogs get dead. Let's get out of here." The first thing she tries to do is write blood off, to the point where, did she have some kind of axe to grind against blood to begin with? I mean, because remember when she tries to talk Vic into going down under, she says you can't bring the dog. And then when she comes back, she tries to get Vic to write the dog. And now, granted, he's dying, but you'd think, at least for some type of sentimentality to prove her loyalty, she'd at least try to save the dog.
No, but it's like within 5 seconds, she's like, "Let's go, ditch the dog." Yeah, I do think in the movie they make the decision a little bit easier for Vic. They make her less of a likable character. Like I said in my review, they made her more power hungry. Like she's more interested in taking over the Down Under, which is not in the story, like at all. She's ready to like kill her father and just leave in the story because she's entranced by the above ground world. That violent anarchic area. Like that's what she's drawn to because of how stagnated things have gotten in the Down Under.
And there's a whole subgroup. That's what teenagers do for fun. They sort of like in Game of Thrones, where the princess dresses like a commoner so she can go out on the carnival night. They dress up as rovers. Oh, hey, Lance. They dress up as rovers and go on the surface to get a few laughs. Hopefully not get killed and then come back down. It's like a whole subculture of the sort of rebellious youth in a post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah, exactly. But I also think, and it reminds me, Vim, before we even started, Vim said something in the chat where he was talking about how maybe I think it was Vim, it might have been somebody else, said that they wouldn't trust anything with fangs and hair or something like that, implying that they wouldn't trust the dog over the woman. But fun fact, the dog who plays Rover, shoot, I can't remember his name now.
Tiger.
Anyway, Tiger, right? Didn't have teeth. Like the teeth when he growls at Quilla June, like those are actually fake teeth. He doesn't actually have teeth, which is crazy.
I never knew that. That's wow.
That's audio commentary, I think, is where I learned that one.
They do seem almost like demonic teeth. They're like bigger than
they come out of nowhere too. Like, whoa. That also goes to the fact that like they always have this like the dog and Quilla June, like Blood and Quilla June in the movie are constantly at odds with each other. They seem to be completely against each other, even more so than in the novel. And in the novel or the story or the book or whichever version you're reading, the dog also says we got to ditch the girl because he knows where this is going. But it seems like they're more direct, like because you have Blood growling at her, ignoring her, and she's like pushing him aside when she's like pushing aside the mattress and all that stuff. It does feel like there's more of a physical separation between the two in the movie. which I think is just foreshadowing for where it goes in the end.
There's also and there's something that I wish he'd expanded on, but it was kind of slickly left it ambiguous. Is and of course L.Q. Jones actually wrote the screenplay. Ellison was suffering from writer's block, which he did for the next 30 years as well. So L.Q. Jones, but in the Down Under, in the Down Under, Vic comes upon another dog, and it's one of the few times where he shows sympathy. He seems to be unable to accept the dog is tied up. He's like, no, we're not going to do this. And then the triumvirate questioned the dog, and I'm going to go back to
I
Black
love
Adder.
that scene. That's probably my favorite scene.
We're thinking, come on, boy, talk.
And we know you talk.
And deep down, it's a great scene, and it's like the Line of Black Adder. I questioned the horse, but he refuses to answer. Does he have something to hide? Well, either that or he can't talk. But is the dog in fact just a dog, or did it too have telepathic ability, and could it communicate with a Vic? Probably not, but that's
it's fun to read it that way. Yeah, it could make that seem more fun. Yeah,
it is, because now in the stories, telepathic dogs are actually fairly common because America was at war and we needed telepathic dogs.
Right.
So you don't really know in the movie, but that's another thing why they wouldn't want blood down there. If a dog can read minds, he might know what the committee is up to. And they certainly don't want information getting out, although they seem to operate in plain sight. I mean, while they're plotting their machinations, there's like a sewing circle just sitting there right behind them. And I'm like, well, you have this all entrenched. Oh, and another thing, by the way, as far as the drop in birth rates go, there was a deliciously low budget film called The World Unknown from like 1951, where they talk about, they have an idea about building huge subterranean cities to ease overpopulation on the surface, but find out that it lowers potency in men, so there wouldn't be any children, so they abandon the idea. What is that a thing? Does prolonged subterranean existence cause potency in men to go down?
Not that I know of, but it's possible.
They just make that up, But it's just weird that would be in another source. But I always figured it was more than just the fact to have to control population and have your men be docile. You'd give them chemicals that would sort of lower their rates, shall we say. But I had a working theory, by the way. I watched a few other retrospects of A Boy and His Dog just for laughs. It's always nice to get other opinions coming in. And one of the ones I kept coming back to, and there's absolutely no proof of this whatsoever, but it's implied in the movie, even though Quilla June does have a father, it's implied that Luke Craddock is actually her father, at least biologically, and that she's the illegitimate child of Luke Craddock. And I took that one step further. What if it's like a cult down there, and Luke Craddock is all the young people's father? He's been like fathering like all the children down there. And it's more of an allegory of his declining virility in old age. And that's why they stoop to bringing these rovers down. Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, I didn't think of it that way before, but that actually is a pretty good analysis. I like it.
Thank you. Absolutely no proof, but that popped in my head, and I'm like, wow, that actually that would.
I'm all about theories without proof, man. That's like half my analysis on my channel.
The Smokeless Gun channel. So. Go ahead.
One thing you said in your portion of my review that I wanted to get back to because it made me think a lot. You said it wasn't technically cannibalism at the end of the movie. And at first I'm like, of course it was cannibalism. What is he talking about? But then I thought about it and you're like, maybe you're right, because he was just feeding his dog. He wasn't necessarily feeding himself. So does that count as cannibalism? So that's just an open question. I know that in the stories, especially the later stories, cannibalism is a much bigger plot point, but in the original story and in the movie, it's never mentioned. So I don't know.
There's one, and I can't remember specifically, but he refers to the fact that he won't have to hunt later on because there's a couple of bodies that as soon as he can get to them, they can
Oh, yeah, I think
those.
you're right. I think you're right.
And they omitted that line because they wanted the final reveal to be blah. Like we had that had never occurred to us until that point. And yes, as far as the blood is also sentient, so you're using one sentient thing to feed another sentient thing. I can see where it was going, but one specific thing that is very important is that Vic makes it very, very clear he didn't eat a bite.
Right.
He did not partake of the feast, shall we say. And was that out of guilt? Was it because he was making the sacrifice to give it all to the dog? Did he just think it was gross? But Harlan Ellison, by the way, elephant in the room, Harlan Ellison absolutely despised that last line about how she had remarkable judgment, if not necessarily good taste. Ellison despised that line. And I love something you said, by the way, where Ellison complained that the movie was misogynistic. And it's like it wasn't before.
Exactly.
I see a certain amount of misogyny here prior to the end.
Rely on Indy to come through with the facts. Apparently it does affect
Thank you, Indy. Awesome sauce. Thank you. Oh, and one more fun fact on this is a dig deep fun fact. Unknown World had Victor Killian in it. Victor Killian was also in Mary Hartman. He played Mary Hartman's grandfather. You know who else was in Mary Hartman? Ron Feinberg, the guy who played Fellini in A Boy and His Dog.
Right, okay, yeah.
And I'm like, wow. I have absolutely nothing to go with that fun fact, but I'm just like,
the connections. That's the other half of my channel.
I know. So, and that's another thing, by the way. As far as the surface world goes and the down unders, I always go back to it. It's sort of like the Hobbesian dilemma, where the realm of nature is brutish and short for people's like living conditions. It's a horrible situation. You sign a social contract to enter into a society, but that society will have very harsh rules, and they will have a very harsh system of retribution if you don't obey them.
Right.
And we really see that with the committee. And I agree with you, by the way, about the very, very, very obtrusive over narration of the intercom system. It's very jarring. I think they did that on purpose. It reminded me of like the whole German program of Strength Through Joy, where society, well, it's like Orwellian. You're never even in your personal life, we're never going to leave you alone. You're a member of the society and will be treated as such, and you'll listen to every word we say and obey all our rules. I mean, the high crime is lack of respect, wrong attitude, failure to be authority.
Cherry lunch, Lance.
Oh, see you, Lance. Very, very arbitrary and ambiguous laws. Oh, and I love the fact that you got 3 chances, but those 3 chances were arbitrary. Doc even says at one point with Quilla June, maybe you should have gone to 3. Right. As if on paper you get 3 chances, but we can just say, yeah, this is your 3rd. And I always love the fact that because the marching band and the bake-offs and the barbershop quartet, I always had a funny feeling that those weren't necessarily electives.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a more Orwellian system where you just had to be a part of this. Like you had to do this. Yeah.
Here's electives. You have to choose an elective, you know.
And like I said in my review, like I do recognize what he was going for. He's trying to make it claustrophobia through noise, like just constantly bearing down on you. Because he was filming in wide open spaces, but he was trying to make it look like it was underground. So at the same time, he wants to let you know how oppressive this whole society is, and he was doing that through sound. And I get it. just as a movie going thing, it's just annoying. That's really all it's just annoying. That's all it is. I'm not sure it was the best filmmaking decision. Story wise, it makes sense.
And I do love that opening scene where he opens the door and you hear an elephant. And you're like,
yeah.
What the frig is going on? And then he looks at what's the first thing he sees? A graveyard.
A graveyard. Yeah, which is
and I'm like, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, which is ironic because they call it Topeka.
I didn't make that connection. That's very, very good. Excellent.
Thank you. I was proud of myself for that one.
Yeah. I'm the English major. I'm the one who's supposed to point out stuff like that. And like, let me collect my thoughts for a second. Just
please. I've been rambling long enough.
No, you rambling is what keeps this thing going.
I'm good at filling dead air. That's why. And like,
I'm just like, it does definitely feel Orwellian, and it feels like there's many layers of control, but it basically is just like the trifecta, the committee or whatever is so controlling that they're just like all you see them do down under, other than like just debate nonsense, is that they're sending people to the farm, which is obviously they're sending them to die, right? And what they plan to do to Vic, which is revealed later, is that they're going to kill him after they've taken all of the seed he has to give. So basically they're using him the same way he winds up using Coolidge June in the end, just for different purposes. Like, whereas he's feeding his dog, they're just trying to feed their population, so to speak, to put it in really gross terms that make you think things you don't want to think.
and technically he is being assaulted, shall we say, because what they're doing to him is not consensual.
Yeah, at least in the story, it was more consensual. He was like, "Yeah, let's have a fun time, great, woo!"
Yes, in the novel, in the book form, yes.
Yeah,
in fact, he only leaves because he's bored. He's like, "Okay, I've had enough of this." He's right. Sort of like Valentine in The Other Place. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I've had enough. This is getting dull.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. But did you love the fact that they actually and it's funny because Ellison wasn't big on religion, so he, like King, liked to attack it a lot. But it's sort of the whole thing is like an assault on the institution of organized religion, with the fact that they're going through this horrible farce. Vic is married to each girl before things happen.
Consummation, yeah.
They're then going to kill him. If you look at the blackboard, it says Vic ? And then the girl's name. They just keep crossing the girls off.
Right.
They're all legally married in the eyes of the church. What do they say in Little Murders? Legally binding. What a horrible phrase. It's not happening in a wedlock, so they're not going to have 35 single mothers, pregnant teenagers. They're going to have 35 pregnant widows. And they've already set it up so that they'll marry each one of those pregnant widows off to another legally binding marriage. So on paper, it's all perfectly acceptable within the Christian church. And it's like, wow, because this is one of the most diabolical things I've ever seen. But technically, it's fine.
Yeah, it's Henry VIII levels of rationalization. Yeah.
Well said. Well said. And then, of course, all they have to do is, let's see, Vic, you have lack of respect. Yeah, check. The wrong attitude. Check. Failure to obey authority. Check. And, of course, one of the funniest ironies is when he does escape and Blood says, if they had just let you have your way with the girl, you would have never left. And Vic's like, yeah, you're probably right. One thing that always not bugged me, but I always wondered about was when at the end where Vic could shoot all three of the triumvirate, but he doesn't. He just sits there strangely transfixed. Is it just like he's so baffled by how crazy the society is, he can't look away like a car accident? Is he playing it to a bus to like kind of figure out what his next move should be? Why does he just stand there like an idiot?
That's actually a really good point, and I hadn't thought of it that way before. Because like, from a storytelling movie point of view, it's just like it's dragging it out. It's making you feel more suspense. It's waiting for the android to come after him, and it's making her keep talking to him until she finally agrees to go with him. So you can kind of like rationalize it as he's waiting for her to do that, but that doesn't seem in character. Like, it really doesn't. So I think maybe your interpretation is more right, that like he's just baffled by this. Like, he who has never really known civilization is looking at these three people trying to impose order on people in the most batshit way, and he's just, is this civilization really? Like, something like that is how I would read it if I gave it more thought. But no, like, I never even thought of that before.
It's just something that always like stayed with me. I do like the fact one of the best lines is, "I need to get back in the dirt so I can feel clean."
Right.
We said that, my buddies and I said that for years. That was like just in not necessarily fitting fashions, but that was just our thing. Whenever we wanted to get a dodge, I had to get back in the dirt so I can feel clean. It's such a great line. And of course, it's almost like, remember in Aliens, where Ripley's questioning the morality of humans over aliens, and she goes, "You don't see them killing each other for a percentage." Vic says, "I want to get to a nice, straightforward fight with some son of a bitch over a can of beans."
Right.
Up there, you know where you stand. Down here, it's a sort of Machiavellian chessboard bullshit, for want of a better term, and he despises it.
And
trying to kill him, he despised it.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. It's like a cry for anarchy more than anything else. But I can get behind that. Again, I got to think for a second to come up with it. Jason Robards in this movie. This is like behind the scenes movie stuff. He was such a professional. When he grabs that sandwich and eats it in that one long take, which the editor stupidly cut up and shouldn't have, he's grabbing a sandwich from a catering table that had been laying out for days. And that sandwich, apparently when he bites into it and then he looks at it, he's just looking straight at mold, like just the grossest, nastiest mold. But he never misses a beat. And then he just takes another bite of it. Like, that's levels of professionalism that I don't think are necessary. I wouldn't have done that.
It works so well. I mean, up top, people are reverting to cannibalism because they're starving. Down here, you're cutting the crusts off your sandwiches.
Right.
What could be more la-di-da? And when he takes it, it's almost like he smells it. He's probably smelling it to see how moldy it was. in reality, which is, I never do that. It's a great fun fact. But it's almost like is this acceptable to me? And it's that whole let it eat cake situation. I really thought Robards stole the movie. I've seen him in a bunch of things over the years, but I really think he gave that performance as if it was Dr. Zhivago. And it was just like, again, this sort of like fluff acid sci-fi piece. But he looked like he was having fun doing it. He really did look like he was having fun.
Also, one of his best lines, I think it's his very last line he improv'd. It was we need to go get another Michael out of storage. Like, that part was written, but it was the second half of that line where he's like, and make him wipe that goddamn smile off his face. He came up with that on the spot. That was just improv'd. And apparently he even apologized afterwards. He was like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to improv." And they're like, no. We're going to keep that.
Well, it explains why Michael had that stupid smile on his face.
Smile on his face, exactly. It works.
Because it's funny. You don't know Michael is an android until he explodes. And I remember when that first scene happened, it was, that scene is almost like a nightmare sequence.
Yeah.
So when Michael starts,
he just keeps coming.
He just keeps coming, and then all of a sudden he starts exploding. And I'm like, why is the big man exploding? And then, he's an android. It wasn't registering. I was just like, is it?
Yeah, there weren't really any hints that it was an android. Not really. Like, if you watch it knowing that he's an android, you can see little bits and pieces here and there. But for the most part, he's just some big dude with a stupid grin on his face.
Dressed as a farmer.
Yeah.
Which, ironically, is the same clothes they give to Vic. You know,
Right.
they dress them together, so it's this whole father-son situation. And every time Vic gets out of line, they want Michael to discipline him. So it's a very bizarre scene. Oh, right down to the fact that the bathtub they use is in the firehouse.
Oh yeah.
And they're scrubbing him down. They'd almost have to scrub him down because he'd be living among fallout for all those years. But another thing they have in the firehouse is the pool table. One of the things Middle America did in the days before, like a very small towns, sometimes the gathering point was something weird, like the barbershop, hence the barbershop quartets, or the firehouse. A little fun fact for you, totally unrelated. The Boston molasses flood. I don't know if you ever heard about this.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
It was true. They had this like giant vat that was used to hold molasses to make Boston beans with. The subcontractor who made it cut corners, and the thing gave out, and many people drowned in molasses. One of the places it hit was the firehouse, and like 12 people were killed because the ritual they had, unless it was a fire, they would have a card game in the firehouse, and people would just come on their lunch hour and play cards with the firemen. The firehouse was, in fact, a gathering point. And I thought that was a nice touch where the thing actually has like a pool table where if there's not a fire, townspeople can just come in and hang out with the firemen and shoot pool. Because, like they say in River City, you can't have a pool hall because that's where the hooligans would hang out.
Right. No, like I don't know. I've never thought of firehouses that way, but I do I recognize I've got that like cultural imprint in my brain that firehouses are somehow part of that Norman Rockwell Americana. But the way you explain it actually makes it make a lot more sense to me. So yeah, the fact that they set that in the firehouse was more than just trying to recall Americana. It was just showing that this is where people would come together. Yeah, I get it. That's cool. And Indy here brings up a really cool analogy, comparing this to the time machine. Except the Morlocks are above ground and the Eloi are in the down under, which I think is interesting. It's not a perfect analogy, but it is an interesting way of looking at it.
It's something that you see a theme a lot. I mean, Metropolis,
True.
and any number of others where there's almost like two casts.
Yeah,
and what one can look at the pros and cons of both. Another thing I wish I'd exploited more in the movie, speaking of the Morlocks, which as you recall, I say were a precursor to modern zombie films. The Screamers in the book are a more prevalent character. Yeah. And what they basically are is they're humans who have suffered radiation to the point where their skin is literally falling off. And their microwaves have fried their brains, very similar to the story arc in The Incredible Melting Man or First Man in Space.
Tom McCluskey.
Oh, hey, Tom, what's going on, man? Where the radiation fries their brains, which causes them to act in a zombie-like fashion. But again, I guess for economy of story arc. One thing I'm really glad...
And also economy of filmmaking. Yeah.
Well, of course. Oh, and one thing I am glad LQ left out, and he probably did it because it would have cost too much to do, but in the story, they don't just hide in the furnace. Vic sets fire to the buildings and then says, we'll hide in the furnace. That will protect us from the heat. Right. And I'm like, apparently Harlan Ellison had never heard of a convection oven.
Right. I remember when I read the story a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, what?
How does you ever take a roasting pan out of an oven? It roasts what's inside. But
no, and I like to talk about the differences between the book and the movie, but I want to make it very clear, just as my own little disclaimer here. I think the movie is surprisingly faithful, way more faithful to the story than I would have thought possible. Like, because the story is it's so gnarly, and you know, the morality is so uncomfortable, and there's just a lot of stuff that happens in the story that I didn't think they were going to translate to film, but they still do. And I had seen the movie before I'd read the story, and then but it had been a long time. And then when I reread the story, I'm like, I don't remember this being in the movie, but sure enough, it is in the movie. So when I'm talking about the differences, I'm not nitpicking. I'm not saying that the movie is somehow worse because it's, you know, different. I'm just pointing out differences because it's just one of the things I like to do. Like I like the human android with a stupid grin on his face, but in the book, it's an actual like it's like a robot. It's like a box with arms apparently, or something like that.
It's one of those old style robots where it really like P9. You know, it's like not. They didn't even try to go human with it.
Speaking of which, my son went to his first robotics competition yesterday. That was fun. Ooh, wow, completely unrelated.
Oh. Very cool. Did he win?
Not really. He's but you know, that's not it. It's like a group thing. I mean, there are winners and losers, but it's not. That wasn't really the goal for this particular instance because he's the newest team. He's the rookie team. They weren't expecting to win. They knew their robot didn't work properly. They were just trying to prove that they could do certain things.
Excellent. That's
which is awesome. I'm so proud of him. I think that is the coolest.
I've never built a robot. I'm very proud of him too.
Yeah. I've built Legos.
Yeah, no, really. Does that count?
No.
I snapped a few of my Micronauts together in different forms. That's kind of building a robot.
Given that Jason Robards was in Topeka in this, and Kansas City in the day after, if you see him anywhere near Kansas, run. Good point.
Good call. Good catch.
I've got to do my video on the day after one of these days. I've got it back there. Just haven't done it yet.
It's so depressing.
It is so depressing. I'm not looking forward to watching it.
Do it as a double feature with Threads.
Oh, yeah. I remember you guys were talking me into doing that during one of our streams. Yeah.
Well, if it's possible to make television work darker than the day after, Threads does it. Threads is actually darker than the day after, and I've seen both of them on several occasions. Yeah. Oh, okay. Trivia question, by the way, for all you sci-fi buffs. I'm going to give Indy a second to get this. I'm not going to actually give the answer. Trivia: what's the last line in the day after, and where does it come from?
Oh. Wow, I don't even remember.
All right, I'll tell you what. I'll give the line. You tell me where it came from. Is there anybody out there? Anyone at all?
Other than Pink Floyd, I have no idea.
Oh, come on. I know Indy knows this one. Has he commented yet? Oh, there's sun in my face.
Saying something about...
Out of paper mache? Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll tell you. It's actually from the... radio adaptation of the War of the Worlds. It's the last line of the radio adaptation of War of the Worlds.
Yeah.
So
I haven't listened to that in so long.
it was enough. I loved John Lithgow's idea because the EMP has fried everything. So
right.
They find the old crystal radio, which would be unaffected. There would be a lot of people broadcasting, but you'd be able to pick up what there was. I thought that was brilliant.
No, that's neat. Yeah.
It was.
Okay, now I really want to watch it again. Even though I know it's depressing.
You want to watch it? Why would you want? You might need to watch it, but you don't want to watch it.
It's like last week when I was watching Robot Monster, my son comes into the room. He's like, "Why are you watching this?" Like, I think it's self-evident. Look at this guy. He's in a gorilla costume with a space helmet on. Come on. Why wouldn't you watch this?
Now, which is the actual fact? They had the gorilla costume but didn't have the mask, or they had a robot costume, had a robot mask but didn't have a costume. They had one of the things first and did the other half out of necessity. Do you remember which one it is? Or
they had the gorilla costume first, and then they made the helmet.
Check.
There's more to it than that, but that's the gist. I'll talk about it in my review, I'm sure. But also the helmet that the kid wears at the beginning of the movie was actually like a toy designed for some TV show. I don't even remember. And the movie almost got sued over it for using it because they didn't have a license or something. I don't know. So I'm learning lots of cool trivia. I've got like a whole book on it, and I've been reading that. So like, I'm going to have fun with that review. It's going to be hard because it's a short movie and I want to do a longer review. And whenever I do a short movie and a long review, that makes it a lot harder to edit. Because I have this OCD thing where I refuse to use the same footage twice. And that always makes it more difficult than it has to be.
You can use footage from other movies too.
Yeah. Anyway, I did want to say hi to Snarky. And there's a couple other people who've shown up. Mike Silva Hello.
Mikey.
And of course, Tom McCluskey. We said hi. Anyway. And you can see Robot Monster on YouTube. I think you can even find the red and blue 3D version.
Really?
But as I will talk about in my review next week, the actual 3D version that was made in theaters and was shown in theaters was not the red and blue version. It was the polarized version, kind of like the 3D movies we see today. And apparently it looked way better.
Really?
But in 1983, when they remastered, or they re-released Robot Monster as a 3D movie, they turned it into the blue and red version. And that's the only version you can get because Wade Williams wants too much money to make the other version available for home video.
You have been doing your homework, haven't you?
I do my homework. People don't believe me. I've been accused of just reading Wikipedia. I definitely don't do that. And Robot Monster will prove it because everything Wikipedia has to say about Robot Monster is wrong. Everything.
I have to share my Wikipedia story with you now. I have to. And
go for it.
Okay. Long story short, as you know, I became obsessed. There was a theory I had heard years ago that there was a teleplay that was written based on A Boy and His Dog. And I had even heard a rumor that the pilot had actually been shot. And I became obsessed with this. It was going to be like some of the Dylan Hunt thing where Vic and Blood go from town to town, and each time they have a little adventure, that type of thing, which would fit actually fairly easily to TV. It'd be like kind of the 80s, that type of thing. Yeah. So I became like obsessed with this. And at the time, the only site I knew, and we're going way back here, the only site I knew that I could look that up was Wikipedia. And when I read what Wikipedia had on A Boy and His Dog, it said that Vic and Quilla and Blood go to find over the hill. And I'm like, not only is that categorically wrong, it defeats the entire point of the story. And I became rather perturbed. I was like strangely angered by this. And Harlan Ellison, who was very much alive at this time, had a website, and he used to go on it and chat with people periodically. And I just said I thought he might find this funny. And so I went on the site and I go, "You're going to get a kick out of this, Mr. Ellison." I was looking up something on Wikipedia about A Boy and His Dog, and they got your whole story wrong. Isn't that funny? And he wrote me back this like long, I printed it out. I still have it in my papers. This long, very articulate, but scathing comeback like, "Wikipedia, what do you expect, you novice, you idiot, you charlatan, you shill, you person of limited intelligence."
That sounds like Ellison. Yeah.
What are you, a moron? You're trying to look my work up on Wikipedia? I'm insulted that it's even on there, let alone that you would use that as a source. Oh, and by the way, there are a number of typos. I think spell check is probably your second favorite site, isn't it? And I'm like, wow. They say never meet your hero.
No.
But wow. And I wrote him back and I said, I got to tell you, I've never been chastised so articulately. But in the course of your chastisement, you never answered my question. Is there a teleplay or not? And he came back and said, "Well, yeah, I guess I overreacted. Anyway, here's the whole story." And he got halfway through, said, "I have to go. Someone's come over with subs or something. Someone brought him lunch. I'll have to get back to you after lunch." And he comes back and goes, "You know what, Bob? I can't do this. You'll just have to live without the information. I can't keep answering these questions for you people." And I'm like, was there a teleplay or not? Yes or no?
Yes or no question.
Yes or no? And I did find out on my own, and I put $40 into his estate. But I'm like, wow, he's every bit the curmudgeon I had read about. And I even put in my last correspondence with him, I go, "You're still enduring fan." I still think he was a great writer. But I'm like, dude, where's this coming from? The hostility? But that's my Harlan Ellison story.
No, and most writers are egotistical jerks, at least on some level. And I say that as a writer. Have you checked out my book Paradox on Amazon? Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
Ellison, Ellison had some issues for sure. He was very protective of his work, extremely, to a ridiculous degree, protective of his work.
Well, I think that was part of the problem. I've read the teleplay; it's not very good.
Yeah,
and I'm not blaming him for that. I think what he did was, how should I put? Every time he wrote for television, he kicked himself because they basically said his writing was too intelligent for television. A little secret it is. So I think he was writing down to the Johnny Sixpack TV viewing audience, and it feels like it.
Yeah. And another thing about the Wikipedia article for A Boy and His Dog, if you just read the Wikipedia article, you'll come away thinking that Ellison loved the movie, which he didn't. Like, he didn't hate it as much as you think, but he still did not love it. And he was very, very mean about the ending of the movie, which he despises with every fiber of his being. Even when he's trying to be nice in later life interviews, you can still sense he's seething about it. You know, he's just that kind of writer, which I can understand that, but man, some writers are jerks.
Supposedly the story goes when Quillajune is shoving blood out of the way when they're getting to the boiler, he says, "Tell this cow to keep its hands to himself." And Ellison went to the ceiling. He goes, "A dog wouldn't use anthropomorphic insults as a put down." And I'm on what are you basing that theory?
What?
But apparently he hated the line. That's why if you notice, he goes, "Tell this to keep its hands to itself." There's like a little diphthong there where it's because they actually clipped a line out, and it cost money to do that. When he screened, it was first screened in the Sci-Fi Convention in 1974, right before its release, and he actually passed the hat and says, "To all you true sci-fians out there, kick in some money because I want to have that line cut because Blood would never say that." And I'm like, so yeah, he did take his work way too seriously.
And yeah, since we're talking about Ellison, I guess we got to talk about the Terminator ever so briefly. Yeah, he thought the Terminator completely ripped off his work, specifically his work for The Outer Limits, Soldier, and the Demon with the Glass Hand. And having done the deep dive into it, having looked at all the evidence, and as much as I love saying James Cameron ripped him off, I don't think he really did. I think maybe some elements were taken, maybe subconsciously or even maybe a little deliberately, but not. You can't say the Terminator is Soldier. It's not. It's not the same story. And Demon in a Glass Hand barely has anything to do with the Terminator. I don't see it. I really don't see it. I would love to side against James Cameron because I do think James Cameron steals from people often and never admits it. But I don't think this is the case.
Well, I think that's why Avatar was such a brilliant move by him. You steal from one person, you're a plagiarist. Steal from 12 to 15 different people, and it's an homage. I mean,
right.
The first time I saw Avatar, I go, "Oh, he stole that from this, and oh, he stole this from that, and oh, he stole that." You know, it's the word for world is forest meets Call Me Joe meets Hot House meets Starship Troopers meets. It's like he stole from everybody, and it worked, and he's very lucky because he was never sued. But but there's one more piece. Speaking, we were talking about it earlier. If you put Demon with the Glass Hand, which is about a future war and people going back in time. By the way, did you know that the Kaiban, that was supposed to be a backdoor pilot for a series similar to The Invaders?
Read that. I read that on Wikipedia, so I wasn't sure how true it was, but I had read that. Yeah.
he had hoped that the Kaiban would have been a whole series. It wasn't to fruition. But if you combine the two works with I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, where a computer goes not only sentient, but becomes misanthropic. You put the three together. That's why I believe the exact words are with acknowledgments to the works of Harlan Ellison.
Right.
Because it was these three works where when you put them together. Now, supposedly someone said, I believe it was Cameron who said he was actually ripping off Teenagers from Outer Space.
Yeah, I think I've heard that. Yeah.
Which is actually far more similar.
I know that the studio actually settled with Ellison against James Cameron's wishes, and he's kind of mad about it. He thinks they should have taken it all the way. That's all I really know, though. And like I said, most of my information on this one is just like secondhand or Wikipedia type sources, So I don't really know that much.
I had heard an interview with Ellison, which is funny. A lot of the interviews I've heard have been taken down. I don't know why. I don't know if they're trying to cancel Ellison after he's dead, but what he said was, he goes, it wasn't even about the money, although he did take the money. It was the fact that he wanted the acknowledgement, and that's why he insisted the term with acknowledgments that the work of Harlan Ellison is put in. And from what I understand, Cameron was more mad about that than the bread, because he wanted to say it was an original work. And Ellison was satisfied with the acknowledgement, again, from the studio, not from Cameron. Cameron
had nothing to do with that. Yeah.
But
yes, Tracy, Outer Limits was great. And actually, I do have, for my channel members or for my Patreon members, I do have an Outer Limits review coming out later this week that actually deals with an episode from the second season that I think is highly underrated, because it's very silly, but at the same time, it's awesome. And that's the one where the tumbleweeds turn out to be evil. I think it's great. And I will explain why when that review drops. Sorry, I can't make it like free for everybody, but copyright.
More than understand. Eddie Albert is actually astonishingly good when he gives a monologue in that episode.
Oh, yeah.
And anyone else, it would have been silly. Somehow he actually makes it work.
Yeah. The episode takes itself so seriously, and it's got fake frogs flying across the screen. It looks stupid, but it takes itself so seriously, and I think it works. I like it.
It does. I think it works as well. The Outer Limits was great. Martin Landau, who was, I think, in 2 episodes, but Martin Landau talked about, because one of the things he loved about Outer Limits was they weren't doing a TV show; they were making mini movies.
Yeah, basically, for sure.
They were short films for TV, and he's right, they were. But yeah,
I'm not that kind of salesman. I'm not gonna go do the whole pitch. I'm dying and starving, and I need your Patreon money to survive. I'm not gonna do that.
I'll take it.
Support me. If you don't want to support me, it's fine. I don't care. To be perfectly honest, I don't quite understand how Patreon works. I don't understand why people just give money to other people. It seems weird to me. Maybe maybe it says more about me than it says about you guys, but I don't understand. I mean, I do give people money on Patreon. I just don't understand why I do it. I don't understand why it works. I'm weird.
Well, specifically with me, when I was first starting my channel, the 3 people that helped me most, I joined all 3 of their Patreons.
Yeah.
You being one, Dave Sundstrom, and of course Retro Nerd Girl. The 3 of you guys were, because when I first started, I was expecting, when I went to various people looking for input, I was expecting, why would I help my competition? At worst, and at best, sort of apathy, just keep doing what you're doing, you'll be fine. But all 3 of you actually dropped what you were doing and gave me input, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of that.
No, I mean,
Thank you, Tug.
You're welcome. But as a creative, I know the difference between constructive criticism and just being it's fine, just keep doing what you're doing and you'll do great. You have to say something else, something that actually helps. I get it. Support is good. Support is great. Support is awesome. But sometimes creative people need more than that.
Yes, like me.
And hey, apparently you live streaming these on your channel helps you not freeze.
Well, that also, daughter, granddaughter are still visiting daughter's boyfriend.
Oh, so you have no bandwidth issues. Nice.
Exactly. I think this is Thrash taking a nap. So my limited Wi-Fi is only being divided one way. Yeah. Although I don't know why I don't crash more in my night show. I did have to stop using StreamYard, and I went back to YouTube for my night shows because of that. But I'm not sure why I don't freeze more on my night shows. But we'll see how I do tonight. Because, shameless plug, Tonight at 7, I'm going to be going on with Sister Sarah from My Flock is Everywhere and Denny Staten from about 15 YouTube channels.
Right.
And we're going to be talking, ironically, we're going to be talking about movies, great movies, adapted from books. Guess which one of the ones I'll be talking about will be?
The Terminator.
I'm sure that will come up. One of the ones I can't wait, and there's more of these than you can imagine. A novel which is based on a movie which has been based on a previous novel. And that actually happens more than you'd think.
Yeah, I can see that.
My wife goes, "Don't you have this book already?" "Oh, no, I have the original book. This is the book based on the movie they made about the book." "Oh, okay." James Clavell did that with The Last Valley.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I know that it's happened. I'm trying in my brain to come up with examples, and I'm just drawing a blank. But I know it's happened more than once. Like I know there's examples of things like books being based on a video game that's based on a movie that's based on a book. You know, like I know these things happen. I just can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I'm glad you brought that up. Why are so many movies based on really cool video games bad? What fails?
I am not entirely sure. I think a lot of it has to do with they insist on having like fan service moments, like callbacks to the game that are not necessary, and they're just kind of in your face. And I think a lot of the movie producers, especially in the earlier days, like movies like Doom and the original Mario Brothers, like they weren't doing it out of respect for the property or that they knew the property. They were doing it because there was just it was a cash grab, and they were basically thinking they were playing down to an audience that didn't exist. Like they were assuming the audiences were, you know, just gamers were just idiots, and that they would watch anything based on a property just because it has the property on it. And the fact that the Mario Brothers movie actually made money doesn't help, but I think that's part of the problem. But while we're on this subject, Fallout, the TV show, is based on a video game, which is based mostly on A Boy and His Dog, the movie, which is based on the book A Boy and His Dog. So there you go. There's an example.
There you go. So putting the cart before the horse, but we got there eventually. Yes, we did. Yeah. And I must say the first season, although I there's supposed to be a second one, I haven't heard anything about it, but the first season of The Last of Us, I thought was excellent.
Yeah, it is really good.
It did take tremendous liberties with the game, but I thought it was excellent. So it can be done.
It can be. And I think streaming TV shows these days, like long form storytelling, and the fact that we're now in a generation of filmmakers who actually grew up playing video games, so they have the respect for the material. Like I feel like we're entering an age where you can do it. Still 80-90% of video game adaptations are going to be terrible. I mean, Uwe Boll's still out there making movies, but I do think it is possible. And I am like tentatively excited about the idea of a BioShock TV series on Amazon. Because Fallout, also excellent. It's really good. I really like it. Arcane is technically based on a video game, and Arcane is one of the best things on Netflix right now. So it's possible. It is possible. And yeah, the first season of Last of Us was fantastic. I'm kind of excited about season 2, although I don't like the story of Last of Us Part 2. I think it does a lot of things wrong, but I'm still going to watch it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if like my love for the show can transcend my issues with the story.
Was it delayed for something? Because I feel like it should have already been out by now. And it
the writer's strike. The writer's strike. Yeah.
Sorry, duh. That's why Pedro Pascal has been making those commercials for Corona. Which is funny because he's not from Mexico. He's from Chile. It's funny. I work with some dudes from Ecuador, and every time I say something about Mexico, they go, "Bob, we're not Mexican." I go, "Neither am I. I'm just talking about Mexico."
Right.
But they get really sensitive. So why Pedro Pascal is promoting a Mexican beer as opposed to Chilean red, which I'm assuming is what they call Chilean beer. Beyond me. I don't know. It sounds like something they would have done. Watch, they're going to go out and invent that now, and I'll get no credit.
I remember there's a story. It might be apocryphal where the Red
or at least
Stripe,
wildly inaccurate.
the Red Stripe, the beer company that based out of Jamaica, was trying to get Bob Marley to shill for them, basically. And Bob Marley said no, and they're like, "Why? Is it because you have something against marketing or beer or anything like that?" He's like, "No, it tastes like garbage." He just didn't like it, which I thought was funny.
I thought Bob Marley didn't drink.
No, I don't think he does either.
Because of his religious convictions. The ganja was a separate matter, but I don't. Maybe it was because he didn't drink.
Yeah, that might be the actual reason. Yeah, like I said, it might be an apocryphal story. I don't know. It's just what I've heard.
It's a good story.
I like
it. And he did not shill for Red Stripe. So regardless of the motivation, the resolution of the story is still accurate.
Yes. Sometimes the story itself is good enough that it doesn't matter if it's true. I stand by that.
Well, I will die on that hill about Saul when Saul gives his death speech in Soylent Green.
Yeah.
And I'd still say that
Heston.
Charlton Heston that knew he was dying, and it was this goodbye, and people were like, no, he wasn't even on set. He's just talking into a phone. Charlton Heston didn't know he was dying. And no, I love that story to the point where I'm going to believe it, even if it's wrong. Right. It's a great story.
When facts become legend, print the legend. Yeah.
Well stated. Well stated.
That's Liberty Valance, right? Yeah.
That could be. Could be. Oh, one thing I love about Liberty Valance, you got me firing on all four cylinders now. Liberty Valance played by Lee Marvin, right?
Yeah.
And his henchmen are Strother Martin and Lee Van Cleef.
Right.
In a very famous episode of The Twilight Zone, Lee Marvin comes back to have a showdown with this guy who's actually dead, and he has to go to the graveside, and yada yada, blah blah blah. Indy, help a brother out here. Two of the other guys in the bar are Lee Van Cleef and Strother Martin. So it's weird that it's this sort of like homage to the man who shot Liberty Valance.
That's fun. Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
Yeah. Love it.
Wednesday is Soylent Blue Day.
Was there Soylent Blue?
I don't remember.
in the book, there's Soylent Yellow and Soylent Green. And Soylent Yellow is less...
I know in the movie you see Soylent Red. They talk about it.
Oh, I forgot that.
But I don't remember there ever being blue. There might have been. Who knows? I don't know.
Who knows?
It's made from Smurfs.
Well, in the book, it's actually made out of Soylent is soy and lentil.
Hey, Damien,
what's going on, man? The whole cannibalism angle is spoiler alert, is added for the movie. It's not in the book. The book actually isn't that good. It's more police procedural than actual action. And I read it, but I didn't love it. It's not my favorite work by Harry Harrison.
Oh, according to Indy, yeah, there is blue in the film, and red and orange and yellow. Okay. I mean, I believe you. It's been a while since I've seen the movie, which is odd considering it's my most popular review on my channel by a lot.
It's an amazing review. It's an absolutely amazing review.
I find it embarrassing because it's one of my earliest, but that's just life of the creative.
Was it one of your earliest?
It is. It wasn't like one of my first 10 or so. It was like within the first 6 months of me starting my channel. It was like when I was just really getting into my groove, I think.
Gotcha.
The aspect ratio is still all messed up, and my voiceover narration sounds dull, but it is what it is.
Roger.
If I didn't get better with time, I mean, if I wasn't embarrassed, it would mean that I'm not getting better, which, that's what's important.
Check. So, A Boy and His Dog.
Right, A Boy and His Dog. That's what we were talking about.
Well, I'm trying to think if there's anything left that we haven't covered.
No, I kind of assumed this is the way this conversation would go. I figured we'd talk about A Boy and His Dog for the first half, and then we'd just be talking about whatever, because it's just what happens, which is fine. I don't mind.
One thing I keep coming back to, though, is they talk about how misogynistic the movie is. There's only 2 female characters, and the other one, she's not a nice person, but she's one of the triumvirate, and she's actually an equal, maybe not of Lou, but certainly of Doc.
Yeah.
So it is possible for women to be in this movie and actually have a more solid, substantial role as opposed to Quilla June. And I think the thing about Quilla June is it's not so much the fact that it's misogynistic. Quilla June is not a good person.
No, she's not at all.
And Vic is not a nice person. Now, one survives and one does not. But if you look at it through a vacuum, one cannot say it's misogynistic. It's about two horrible people trying to use one another in different ways, granted, but trying to use one another. And it's I mean, there's not a lot of good male characters either. So it's like,
honestly, probably the like most likable moral person in the story is the animal. It's the dog. And even he's, you know, basically using Vic for food. But I mean, I think one of the other thematic aspects of the story that we haven't really talked about is that it's about using other people, whether you're like using them just to use them, using them for your own self-interest, or actually like forming a loving bond with them and like you becoming a symbiotic like relationship. Like Vic and Blood is a symbiotic relationship. They and that by the end reveals itself to be actually a form of love, which is one of the things I love about the movie and the story. And I think that plays into it. And now my brain just shut down again, so I'm losing my train of thought. So you better pick me up.
Oh, way ahead of you. It's definitely about well, it's all comes down to power relations. I mean, there's that philosophical point of view that no matter how altruistic an association you have with somebody, it's still a power relation. They need you for something and you need them for something. And where you meet in the middle is life. And yes, Vic and Blood, they both need each other, period.
Right.
They wouldn't be able to survive up there alone. Vic proves that. I mean, Blood had possibly hours left in him, if not a couple of days, when he gets there. Blood would have died had it not been for his return. They do need each other. And one of the things I did love, however, is the fact that, now, of course, you could take this from a couple different angles, but Blood is the more mature of the two. And possibly it's because, you know, dog every 7 years. Blood is substantially older than Vic is. And he's an older but wiser hound, as it were. Another way to look at it is, and this is something that I actually came up with, one of the ways, let's just say, that Blood learns to think with his big head is, again, because he's older and more mature and not driven as much by drives. But did you ever wonder, could Blood have been neutered? Like dogs often are?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I never thought about it.
That's why he's not as preoccupied. I mean, there's a story arc in.
That's actually a good point. Yeah.
Thank you. I came up with that when I was doing my research. I'm like, because there's a line in an adaptation of Hot House by Brian Aldiss where the main character is controlled by this hyper intelligent fungus who doesn't feel pain or hot or cold or hunger or anything like that, and they enslave this group of people to do their bidding, and they're always hungry and they're always begging for food. And the moral says, is that all you ever think about is food? And the hunter, Hom, says to the fungus, goes, if you've ever been hungry, you'd understand.
Right.
It's that point of view. So if Blood, perhaps the only way Blood can think hypothetically without like sex preoccupying his mind is if in fact he was neutered.
Well, Indy says the government would never neuter a telepathic dog if they want more of them. But I think in the story, it's he's a product of genetic engineering. So like he's a test tube dog. He probably wasn't like naturally conceived in the first place.
Oh, good point.
Because like they were like melding dolphin DNA with dog DNA and other stuff, and you know that's how they made him telepathic. It's not. They don't talk about any of that in the movie because in the original script for the movie, and especially in Ellison's early draft, which is only like 8 pages, I think, or something, there was a lot more exposition, a lot more explanation of details like this. But when LQ Jones came on board, he's like, no, we don't need any of this. Like, it makes for a better movie if you just leave this out. If they really want to know this stuff, they can read the story. Because in a movie, you've got to keep going. You got to keep moving. And what you can come up with in your brain to rationalize anything that's happening on screen is usually better for you because it came from your brain than it would be, if it's just told to you. That's the whole show don't tell thing.
And Vic's explanation fits perfectly.
Yeah.
Blood said something, so you don't have to give a long explanation because he's just paraphrasing. Blood said something about how we think alike. And it's like, oh, your minds are on similar wavelengths.
Right.
So Blood can't talk to everyone, but people who he's on the same wavelength of, that he can. And that's why hanging on to Vic was so important. He found somebody who could actually listen to him.
Right.
So he needs to hang on to him. It's like if you're in a foreign country and you find someone who speaks English. You are not my best friend. You know?
Yeah,
you get over here.
Yeah, it's when I went to bring up Jamaica again, oddly enough, when I went to Jamaica, which I mean they're still speaking English technically. I still had to find the one Jamaican who basically spoke the Queen's English, and I could understand what he was saying, and he and I became friends.
My understanding is that eventually you develop an ear for it.
Yeah, it just takes time.
Because it's just the inflection one. Although if they're speaking Patois, that's actually almost a different language. I remember once I was working with this guy and he's talking to somebody in Patois, and I said, "Well, what did he say?" And a girl who was also from Jamaica said to me, "If he wanted you to know what he was talking about, he would have spoken in English. He doesn't really spoke in Patois, so you didn't because it was something private between them."
Right.
Like, well, you got to understand them. Why can't I?
Oh, yes. And Damien, a transplant from Canada to the American South. That's a culture shock. And yeah, Savannah, Georgia. I love their accent. It is like the best Southern accent, in my opinion. But when I first went to Savannah just to visit, because I've got friends who live there, I was baffled. Like, what are these people saying? It's like some weird mix of like Jamaican Creole and deep South Mississippi, somehow melded together into something that sounds really beautiful in a weird way. It's hard to explain unless you've been to Savannah. It's its own accent.
I've never been to Savannah.
Oh, you should go. It's pretty. I like it. It's probably my favorite place in Georgia.
I've been to Atlanta. I went to Atlanta once, but Atlanta's very cosmopolitan. Atlanta's very, yeah. It's been northernized, for want of a better term. Mercy.
Anyway, so before we go, because it's almost an hour and a half, and I think we have exhausted Avoidance Dog, at least for now. We'll probably bring it up again in a future stream because that's what we do.
Something else. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about next week. I did talk to Damien briefly about whether or not he had any topics he wanted to discuss. And I think this idea came from him. I'm not 100% sure. I don't remember. But I wanted to talk about our favorite sci-fi movie villains, specifically sci-fi, because if we just talk about movie villains, we could do like a 10-part episode. So our favorite sci-fi movie villains, and it just goes without saying Darth Vader will be on that list.
Everyone's number one. It's everyone's number one. Darth Vader.
So I will ask everybody who's usually on the panel if that's a topic they want to talk about. And since I'm assuming Damien is the one who came up with it, if I'm remembering correctly, I'm assuming he'll want to be on. So that's fine. And that'll be next week. So it'll be like I said before, I want to keep these groups a little bit smaller. It wouldn't feel right to not have Thrash. I feel like he's a permanent fixture on my channel. So
Thank you. Well, what we could do is, in the interest of total fairness, since as you mentioned, this topic will take more than one episode, I could you could rotate the episodes. Like, have this episode will be A and B, and we'll have a follow up on the same topic, but have C and D. And
that's probably a good idea. Yeah. In
the interest of total fairness,
right?
Nobody wants to outshadow anyone else. Outshadow, outshine, shine or shadow. Yeah,
they do feel opposites, but are hardly the same.
The only thing that travels faster than light is darkness. Great line, tragic adaptation. tragic adaptation. A Wrinkle in Time was one of my favorite books as a kid, and I tried to watch the recent adaptation, and it is garbage. Just garbage.
Yeah.
I don't know why they can't make a good adaptation of it. I don't know if I just don't know. They made one for like Canadian television too, which was, I guess, equally bad. I never saw it, but I've heard nothing but bad things about it. But.
It's the I Am Legend effect. They just can't get it right.
Well, I think because rather than go for people who have a love of the source material, they go for people who want a cash grab.
That's like what I was talking about earlier with video game movies. Yeah,
Precisely. Or Land of the Lost.
Oh yeah,
Land of the Lost, which was tragic, absolutely tragic. Ugh.
Yeah, you can tell when a movie is made by people who love the material that they're working with and people who don't. Like it's so obvious on screen, and the fact that a lot of people in Hollywood just don't get that really bothers me sometimes. But that's a subject for another day.
Oh yeah, excellent.
So anyway, next week, TBA, who will be on the panel? It'll probably be Thrash and Damien and maybe one or two other people. We'll see. And yeah, I'll see you then. Until next time, never be. And of course, Thrash tonight with Danny and Sarah, right? Yeah.
At 7 p.m.
At 7 p.m. instead of his usual 7:30. So yeah.
Exactly. When we do the collaboration, it's always 7.
Yeah.
At 7. Excellent.
And yeah, until next time, never be ashamed of what you love, as long as you're not hurting anybody.
Peace.
Thank you and good night.
Done.